Hey everybody, my name is Alex Balestra and I'm a senior at Ball State University, and today we're going to be creating a simple hip hop instrumental from scratch. The idea here is to not overcomplicate this process, as it can become very intimidating and frustrating for new and aspiring hip hop composers that just want to make marketable and accessible hip hop beats. I want to explain to you the process in which I go about creating these instrumentals, as well as show you firsthand how these beats come together and ultimately what the final product will look like. Keep in mind, the example I'm about to share with you is in no way the only type of instrumental that you should be making. I simply want to have you feel comfortable with the process before you go out and begin creating your own music. I'm going to be sharing with you a lot of information in these videos, but please don't stress about the finer details. The most important thing when composing your own beats is to have fun and enjoy what you're doing. So, without further ado, let's get started. The first thing that you're going to want to do when beginning to make an instrumental is open up Logic Pro. Once you've done that, create a new blank template and a nice blank session will be created. Before we begin writing, there are a few provisions you're going to want to take to ensure that your project is set up properly. The first of those provisions will be to locate the tempo marking at the bottom of the session and change the tempo of our session by double tapping on this tempo number. For this example, we're going to set the tempo at 135 BPM. When you're making a beat by yourself, you'll have the freedom to set the tempo to any speed that you'd like to write in. Logic Pro does a nice job of following any tempo changes that you may make while you're creating your instrumental. If you feel the tempo is too fast or too slow, simply change the tempo number at the bottom of the session, and Logic will compensate by moving everything you've written to fit your new tempo marking. Once the tempo is set, the next thing we're going to do is move towards the top of the session and click on the meter bar. Notice the meter bar contains chronological numbers beginning with the number 1. These numbers act as place markers for individual bars in the session. Click on the meter bar and drag across to the end of the 4th bar. In doing this, we've created a 4-bar loop. This means that when playing back whatever we've written within the confines of the 4 bars, Logic will repeat the playback to the bar where we begun the loop. This is typically how I personally get my ideas out while writing hip-hop instrumentals. The loop bar will consistently replay what I've written and allows me to listen for any inconsistencies in my writing. Now, locate the cursor bar in the top right of the tracking region of our session and click on the right cursor that's shaped like a cross. This is the secondary function setting for the cursor. By setting this, we can use Command-click to give our cursor a secondary function while we're writing. Something I like to do is drop down this menu and set the cursor to Write, or the pencil-shaped icon. This will help us out when we begin writing later on in the tutorial. Finally, the last thing we're going to do before we begin writing is to find the metronome button located in the bottom right-hand corner of the session. By turning this button on, Logic will play a click track during playback. This is just a simple tool that will allow us to make sure everything is in line with the tempo of the song and that nothing sounds out of place as we write. Once all of these provisions have been taken care of, we can move on to creating the proper number of tracks for our drum kit. The first thing I'm going to do is find the track icon located directly above the tracking area of our session. Click the track icon and select New Track from the drop-down menu. A window will pop up and ask which kind of track you'd like to create. Go ahead and click on the Software Instruments tab and create 4 new software instrument tracks. These software instrument tracks will allow us to select from Logic's library of preset digital instruments while we're writing our instrumental. After we've completed this step, 4 blank instrument tracks will appear over on the left side of the screen in a vertical fashion. By double-clicking on the label of each track, we can rename each one so that we don't get confused as to which track contains which section of our drum kit while we're writing. For the first track, go ahead and type hats. For the second, kick. The third, clap. And the fourth, snare. Once our tracks have been relabeled to reflect the specific instrument each will contain, it's time to begin writing our beat. For the purpose of this tutorial, I'll be making a fairly simplistic instrumental. Once you've got the gist of the writing process, you can make your instrumentals as rhythmically complex and interesting as you see fit. Find the tracking section here, directly next to our hats track, and right-click. This will bring up a pop-down menu. Select Create Empty MIDI Region from the menu, and you'll notice a green box will appear within your track. Find the rightmost edge of this newly created MIDI region and drag it across the tracking area until you reach the end of your 4-bar loop. This area that we've created will give us the ability to write in our MIDI notation that will play back our software instruments. Think of it as a blank piece of staff paper that we can write our own music notation on for our drum kit. Go ahead and repeat this process for the remaining 3 drum tracks. Now that we have a blank region where we can write our drum tracks in, let's choose a preloaded drum kit from Logic's library of presets. To select a drum kit, locate the Library menu located under the Media tab in the top right-hand corner of the session screen. Once selected, a menu will appear with various Logic instruments that you can choose from to assign to your instrument track. For this example, I'll be using the Classic Electro kit. Logic's library of preloaded samples is extensive and offers a lot of options. A good way to get acquainted with all of these options is to experiment with various drum kits for your individual drum tracks. Try using one drum kit for your hi-hat sample, while using another for your snare or clap, and so on. Once you become comfortable with the selection, you'll be able to figure out what kind of sound your beat requires and instantly know where to find it within the library. After you've selected the drum kit, notice the icon representing your hi-hat track should have changed to the Classic Electro Drum Kit's icon. Go over to the blank MIDI region we've just created and double-click on it. A new window will pop up at the bottom of the session. This is known as the MIDI editing window, where we can write in our MIDI notes for the drum kit. Within the MIDI window, there are time markers which represent the various note lengths of each bar. The 1 through 4 in our 4-bar loop represents the 4 quarter notes in each bar. Halfway between each of those are the 8th notes of each beat, and halfway between each of the 8th notes are the 16th note subdivisions of each beat. Experimenting with MIDI note lengths with your virtual drum kit presets is a great way to make your beats more rhythmically interesting. Try creating a drum loop after you've completed this tutorial, and then mess around with the placement of each note until you've created something unique and grooving. Better yet, try emulating a beat from one of your favorite hip-hop songs. This is an awesome way to build experience in songwriting, and you can draw from your favorite songs for inspiration in your own writing. For the purpose of this tutorial, I'll be keeping the drum tracks fairly simple. I'm more concerned about showing you how to write in these drum parts so that you can begin writing them on your own. Remember that secondary cursor tip I showed you earlier? We're going to utilize that now. Go ahead and Command-click on the MIDI region here and drag the new MIDI tile across to the 1 quarter note length. Now, unless you can memorize where each sound is saved within the drum kit preset, a simple way to find the sound you're looking for within the drum kit is to click and hold on your MIDI tile and drag it down along the keyboard until you find the sound you're looking for. This is our hi-hat track, so I'm going to slide my MIDI tile down here until I find the right sample. Now that I've found the correct sample for this track, I can begin writing for this particular instrument. I'm going to change the length of my MIDI tile to the 8th note length for my hi-hat. From here on out, you'll see me writing in the rest of my MIDI tiles using a copy-paste method. I found this to make workflow incredibly smoother. Simply highlight the note we've created, hit Command-C, then come up here to the place marker in the MIDI editor and move it along to where you'd like to position the next note. Then, hit Command-V for Mac users, or on Windows it would be Command-P, and ta-da! We've successfully copy-pasted our MIDI region. Now, repeat this process until we've filled up our 4-bar loop. Let's go ahead and listen back to what it sounds like before moving on. To exit the MIDI editor, double-click on the thin bar outlining the editor window. This will bring the rest of our session back into view. Now, find the empty MIDI region for our clap track by double-clicking on it. Claps in hip-hop music typically fall on either beats 2 and 4 of the measure or beat 3 of the measure. The clap or snare hits on these beats of the bar are part of what give hip-hop its signature feel. Once again, find the Classic Electro kit in the library and select it. For the purpose of this example, we'll be placing the clap hits on beat 3 of each bar in our 4-bar loop. In the MIDI editor, Command-click to place a quarter note MIDI tile on beat 3 of the first bar in your loop. Select the tile and scroll down with it until you found the clap sample. Use the copy-paste method to repeat this step until you have a clap tile on beats 3 of each bar in our loop. Let's take a listen to what we have so far. The next section of our drum loop to write is the kick drum. The kick in hip-hop can take on many different forms depending on what kind of hip-hop you're trying to create. In our example, I've already written in the kick samples for you. Feel free to copy in what I've written and toy around with the placement. You can even add or subtract notes if you feel the need. Just make sure to understand why I've placed the notes where I have. A good rule of thumb when beginning to write beats like the one we're working on currently is to make sure that the individual instruments all fall independently within the orchestration of each other. For example, if the kick drum were to play what the clap does on beat 3, the feel of the instrumental may suffer. Producers will sometimes have more than one drum instrument hit at the same time as a sort of rhythmic effect, but this is typically used sparingly and only to make an impression on the listener, or simply to change things up within the instrumental. When you're working on creating kick tracks that work well within the rest of your own instrumentals, my advice would be to simply write in some notes around the clap and hi-hats. Listen back, then go back in and mess around with what you've already written. Repeat this process until you've found a kick line that pleases you and you can move on with the rest of your beat. Oftentimes in hip-hop music today, you'll hear some additional snare drums interweaving in and out of the rest of the drum track. An additional snare drum can help fill in the empty areas of your drum instrumental and make it feel cohesive and smooth. If done incorrectly, however, using additional snare drums in your beat can end up sounding cliché and unnecessary. Go ahead and repeat the steps we've taken to select our drum kit from the library. Bring up the MIDI editor for our snare drum track, and this time, create an 1/8 note long MIDI tile instead of the 1/4 note length tile we've been using so far. Find the snare drum sample, which can be found 2 tiles above C1 on the keyboard. Take a look at what I've already written for this example. Just like with the kick sample, try copying what I've done here for the snare drum hits. You may have noticed these shorter notes here in the second bar of our loop. For these notes, I've simply copy-pasted my 1/8 note tiles, highlighted them, and then shortened them by finding the edge of the tiles and moving them to the left until they fit within the confines of the grid in the MIDI editor. Once you've gotten that copied down, let's take a listen back. Now our drum instrumental, although simple, has all of the major factors that make up the foundation of our instrumental. If you'd like to read a more in-depth article concerning all of the drum parts I've discussed in this video, please feel free to visit my website located in the description of this video. Under the blog tab, you'll find some posts where I give some examples of different hip-hop beats and discuss the various drum parts and what makes each so great. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next tutorial where I'll be discussing the difference in drum parts between the verse and the chorus. Until next time, guys, I'm Alex, and this has been a lot of fun. See you all soon.